the A3 Instrument Info Day. Before we start, I would like to walk you through some housekeeping rules. Next slide, please. First of all, please note that this event is recording. As a participant, you will have your microphone and your video off by default. All the questions will be gathered from the audience in the application Slido. Please submit your questions as anonymous in case you don't want your name to appear in the recording. As mentioned, Slido is the platform we use for gathering your questions, and you can access Slido browsing www.slido.com and inserting the event code that you see on the screen. As an alternative, you can scan the QR code that will appear very soon on the screen, and you can use the Slido app from your mobile phone. Next slide, please. While accessing Slido, you will find 3 sections for your questions. The height recall Strand 1, the height recall Strand 2A, and the financial and general Q&A. We kindly ask you to submit your questions in the most appropriate section. In the next slide, you will see an agenda of the event. And without further ado, I would like to give the floor now with the next slide to Mr. De Michelis, Director of DG REGIO, Directorate General for Regional and Urban Policy, and to Mr. Malo, the Director of EISMEA, European Innovation Council and SMEs Executive Agency.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Info Day on the Interregional Innovation Investment Instrument. We have a very dense day to go through all the different elements of how the calls for proposals will operate, and hopefully by the end of the morning you will have all the information necessary to successfully apply. But before diving into the details of the instrument, just a few introductory remarks. And we have the pleasure to have with us the Director of the European Innovation Council and SMEs Executive Agency, Jean-David Malo. Jean-David, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nicola, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be with you this morning. I warmly welcome you to this Info Day about the new calls of Interregional Innovation Investment, the so-called I3 instrument for 2021. This call, as you know, have been opened and are now managed by a new executive agency with a very bizarre acronym, EISMEA, the European Innovation Council and SME Executive Agency, that will be in charge of implementation of the program and has been legally operational now since the 1st of April of this year. And more than half a year after the launch, I'm pleased to tell you that we are implementing successfully all the numerous programs that the European Commission has delegated to us, and in particular, these I3 calls on which we will discuss today. Allow me a few introductory remarks about the challenge that we are confronted with, and these calls have the intention to tackle under the leadership of our colleagues and friends from DG REGIO. First of all, regional economies need to innovate, as you know, to transform and adapt to an ever-changing and more competitive and sustainable environment. And in this context, the EU plays a key role by supporting all EU member states and regions to activate their potential for innovation, competitiveness, and sustainable jobs and growth through smart specialization. And more than ever in recent history, collaboration for innovative solutions is necessary for social and economic recovery, environmental sustainability, and resilience. And we need, in this context, to help regions and regional innovation ecosystem to support companies to better sustain their growth and gain new competitive advantage. To be able to be in the forefront and to tackle all these challenges, It's clear, therefore, that EU must support business, mostly SMEs and startups, and fosters their collaboration and partnership with academia, research and technological organizations, public bodies, and of course end users towards the commercialization, the scale-up, and the market uptake of innovative solutions. And EU regions and cities need to create, therefore, new value chains that will allow them to scale up their good ideas in the EU single markets. It's only via innovation that the companies can become more competitive and thrive globally. And this can only be achieved by encouraging cooperation, networking, and the exchange of knowledge via an open innovation approach to reach out to all innovators across the EU and provide them with adequate support. And via I3 program, we intend to foster the creation of these links between key innovation stakeholders, the so-called QLX, having SMEs as front runners. So, in other words, the I3 instrument is about business investment, and it's therefore not a surprise that 70% of its budget will go to companies, mainly SMEs, to improve their competitiveness in the global arena. The program will focus on EU priorities, the green, the digital, the smart manufacturing, but also with an added value that comes from its bottom-up approach that investment will be in line with the region's smart specialization priorities. The program will support the creation of a more competitive Europe that builds on the excellence of more developed regions and brings in also less developed regions to foster better growth for our business and a better life for our citizens. The new calls in this context that will be presented today is a practical tool towards this goal. And during the period 2021-2022, it's about 153 million that will support activities under the I3 program, around 76 million for 2021 and 77, so equally the same for 2022. So these calls will, if you have to keep in mind 5 main orientation, encourage strongly the creation of structured links between EU innovation key players, help ecosystem to overcome market failures, particularly by connecting demand and supply side, support companies building interregional innovation investment in shared S3 priority areas, accelerating innovation, meaning demonstration activities needed to allow market uptake and scale up of innovative solutions, and increase the capacity of less developed regions to participate in new value chain, contributing to cohesion policy objective. So our vision is to see new technology, new innovative solutions to be taken up by the market and create growth, and to see joint investment with companies on areas that will further strengthen the EU and region competitiveness and the less developed or transition regions of the Union. So having said that, as Nicola mentioned it, we have a very packed, very dense, very rich agenda. So I will conclude here. We are looking forward for receiving excellent application for the calls for proposal we are presenting today. And I'm confident that this info day will help you in preparing such successful project. Many thanks.
Jean-David, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Just to complement the words of Jean-David, let me just remind you that this instrument, the Interregional Innovation Investment Instrument, is part and parcel of cohesion policy. In fact, is financed by the European Regional Development Fund. And why is that? Because cohesion policy remains one of the most important financial instruments to finance innovation in member states. In certain member states, in fact, is the biggest EU available source of funding. And the organizing principle of innovation investment under cohesion policy is the Smart Specialisation strategy that brings together actors at the local level to think about the future of innovation in the regions, building on strength and capacities of the region itself. But what we heard over time is that there was a need to open up these strategies and create linkages between regions. And this is exactly what this instrument is trying to do, create linkages between smart specialization strategies throughout the union along value-added chains. And with this, I suggest that we start our dense agenda, and I will pass the floor to Monica Sigri, Deputy Head of the Unit in the region responsible for smart and sustainable growth, that will carry you through the work program of the instrument. Monica.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Good morning, everyone. We can already jump onto the next slide. So with that, I think we can try and make enough time for the more detailed presentations and the Q&A at the end of the day. So I would like to present you what the work program is. The work program for the I3 is a biannual work program. It does cover the description of what the objectives of the I3 is and the specific calls and how they are, what kind of budget they do, what are the conditions, eligibility criteria, etc. As was already mentioned, the implementation of the I3 instrument itself is delegated to the EISMEA agency. And as this is a very new experience already also for us, launching a directly managed instrument under the ERDF, one of the main principles that we have used when designing the work program for these 2 years is simplicity. What does that mean? We have defined relatively wide thematic areas for the calls. So you've seen digital and green transition as well as smart manufacturing. And we will see then how the interest goes and whether there are more narrow and more focused areas in the future that could be identified for future calls. Also, the calls are limited to 2 main strands. I will present you on a slide that the I3 program as such contains more strands than that, but now we are focusing on these 2 main strands, and these are also the subject of the 2 calls that were launched on the 23rd of November. There is also a capacity building strand that will be launched later. I will talk about it a bit on the next slide. There is also, for the moment, limited third country participation. Third countries can participate as part of the consortia that apply for I3 support. However, for the moment, there is no financing included in that, so they are not eligible for financing. Their participation needs to be covered by themselves. But discussions are already underway on third country participation and eligibility for future calls. And as I said, it's a learning process. So there is a policy feedback loop. We will see what kind of experience and lessons learned comes out of the first 2 calls. And we are also open for feedback actually from you. What is difficult, what is good, what is bad, what could be improved. And that will be fed back into future calls for 23-24. And in that aspect, I would also like to highlight that we do have an I3 expert group where we do have participation from managing authorities, public authorities on the regional and local level, as well as stakeholders, associations at EU level that are representing the interests of the quadruple helix. So researchers, academia, business, and civil society in the design of the I3 program and calls. Next slide, please. So what is the general objective? So we already heard what the I3 is for. So the I3's main objective is to encourage smart specialization, partnerships to strengthen value chain linkages across borders in order to encourage internationalization and create opportunities to cooperate at European level. This is achieved by helping these partnerships bring together researchers, business, civil society, and public administration so they can cooperate in investments in shared smart specialization areas through the commercialization and scaling up of interregional innovation projects. So in short, the I3 instrument provides dedicated support to enable these regions and smart specialization partnerships to work together in specific thematic areas, and it helps them address barriers to co-investment and thereby accelerate their investment readiness of the investment projects that they cooperate on. It was already mentioned, so the guiding principle is smart specialization strategies. It does combine this bottom-up approach with the EU strategic priorities, and that's what you can see in the thematic areas that have been supported. We are also looking into synergies and complementarities with EU programs, and under the principle of learning by doing, we are looking at opportunities also with the programs that are implemented by the agency itself, but also with other strands such as Strand C under Interreg, to see what are the potential areas where the two programs can cooperate or complement each other in the future. And on my last slide, I would like to just present how the I3 instrument is structured. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, there are more strands than just a few. As was mentioned, so the I3 instrument has a strong cohesion policy dimension in that it encourages the cooperation between more developed and less developed regions in partnerships, applying for the support that the I3 can provide, as well as half its budget is dedicated specifically to less developed regions. And according to this, there are two main strands with an approximately equal share of financial resources. Strand 1 is financial and advisory support in for developed partnerships, as well as Strand 2A, which is for less developed regions. This latter, Strand 2A, is also complemented by capacity building actions. This is what we call Strand B. And then a small proportion of resources would be reserved for learning activities, evaluation, and capitalization of work under the two main strands. This is what we call Strand 3. The calls that were launched on the 23rd of November focus on Strand 1 and 2A. Strand 2B call is planned for the end of 2022, and Strand 3 will be considered to be launched during the next work program in the years 2023 and 24. Thank you for your attention, and then hope good continuation with the info day. Back to you.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you very much. I would now like to pass the floor to Fabienne Gauthier, who is the head of the unit in the agency that deals, among many other things, also with this instrument. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Jean-David, but you in particular and your team for the extraordinary effort that you put into it. Fabienne.
Thank you, Nicola, and thank you for your kind words. Good morning, dear participants. As mentioned by Jean-David and also by Monica, we are working hand in hand with our colleagues in DG REGIO. And I will go now a little bit more in detail to the instruments that are funded under the I3 program. So next slide, please. So as just highlighted, the program will be managed by the newly set up EISMEA agency. This agency is responsible for the implementation of the European Innovation Council program. And it is a new program that has been set up under Horizon Europe and which is implemented and also designed with the guidance of an independent EIC board and also in close cooperation with investments made via the EIC fund. There are also other programs which are managed by the agency, like the innovation ecosystems. Here we have a clear complementarity with the I3 program, single market actions, consumer policy, and also the topic of today, interregional innovation investments. So a big number of programs which are managed by the agency and which will be implemented throughout the whole duration of our next programs. Next slide, please. Going now a little bit more into the specificities and the specific actions which also have just been mentioned by Monica of the Interregional Innovation Investment instruments. So This program is part of the European Regional and Development Funds, and the aim is to support interregional innovation projects in their commercialization phases and also in their scaling up. This program will be implemented, as highlighted by Monica, via 2 strands in 2021. The first one will be to support financial and also advisory support for investments in interregional innovation projects. And there will be a second strand, which will be also financing and advisory support to development of value chains in less developed regions. So this program will give the tools to our parties, to our applicants, to overcome regulatory and other barriers and bring the projects up to the investment level. There have been several strands mentioned, the strand 1, strand 2B, 2A, and just for information also to you, the strand 2B, which has been also mentioned by Monica, will be launched later on. We will, for the time being, in 2021 and 2022, only implement the strand 1 and strand 2A, and strand 2B will be implemented a little bit later at the later stage. Next slide, please. Digging more into the structure of the instruments. The strand 1 targets partnerships for market uptake and also scale up of innovative solutions in the smart specialization strategies area. Through this strand, partnerships should be able to build on the existing assets like cluster initiatives that have been supported by the Commission, participation in Horizon 2020, and also where applicable knowledge and innovation communities. The idea is also to support a portfolio of investment projects. The second strand of activities is strand 2A. It focuses on increasing the capacity of regional innovation ecosystems in less developed regions for them to participate in global value chains. The idea is also to, for these applicants to participate in partnerships with other regions. So you will see, and this will also be more into details later on, you will see that this strand has a strong cohesion dimension, and it focuses also in creating the links between less developed regions with those where such regional innovation capacity is more advanced. So these are the 2 main strands that the agency will be implementing this year and next year. And the idea is here to support both foreign direct investment driven value chains and also emerging sectors. Next slide, please. So what are the calls and what are the deadlines for you to submit your application? We have seen the budget in the previous presentation, which are foreseen for these strands of activities. So we have opened the call for strand 1 and 2A on 23rd of November 2021. So it has just been launched, and this is also the purpose of the Info Day today, to give you more insight into how to submit and prepare your applications. And there will be 2 cutoff dates next year. The first one will be on the 1st of February 2022, and the second cutoff date will be on the 18th of October 2022. So 1 year that is given as a possibility to prepare your proposals and also to submit applications for these 2 first strands. So I will stop my presentation here because you will get much more information in the next presentations, but this was more to give you an overview of our objectives, what will be funded, and also the deadlines that are applicable to this course. Many thanks for your attention, and I wish you a fruitful day today. The floor is yours, Nicolas.
Fabienne, thank you. Thank you very much. We are managing fantastically our little time available. Now we are diving into the nitty-gritty of the 2 strand 1 and strand 2A, and we start with strand 1. And I think that the floor is to Christina.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I will present you strand 1, the first call. We can go to the next slide. So this strand, this call is focused on developed regions, as already mentioned. The call objective is to foster business investments in order to accelerate the commercialization, the market uptake, and the scale up of innovative solutions by bringing together different regional innovation ecosystems in order to collaborate around shared smart specialization priorities. So in this call, we are talking about partnerships, interregional innovation investments, in order to encourage the development of specific or new EU value chains and to tackle specific challenges, specific market failures or weaknesses that the innovators are facing in order to move their technologies, their innovative solutions, their products to the market. Next slide. So the specific call objectives here, here we are focusing, as I said, on developed regions. So the main focus is on increasing the competitiveness of companies of more developed regions on specific EU value chains, to accelerate the commercialization and scale up of innovative solutions, to bring these technologies to the market, to support these companies to invest in these shared smart specialization priorities areas. And of course, a prerequisite is to bring together the demand and the supply side. Next slide, please. So the beneficiaries, we should make it very clear that we are focusing on companies, mainly SMEs. 70% of the budget of the grant will go to companies, to SMEs. So the main target group are SMEs in the I3 calls. The companies can participate either as partners in the projects or via financial support to third parties. The partners may decide to open calls for proposals in order to give this kind of funding to companies. The ERDF regulation allows also large companies to participate, but only when this is very well justified by the proposal, so only in specific cases. For example, when the SMEs are collaborating and the participation of large companies is absolutely necessary, since they may have possible research and innovation collaboration already for the scope and objectives of the project, or they are these SMEs are already connected with these large companies. So their participation is a prerequisite in order to fulfill the objectives of the project. At the same time, beneficiaries can be also any other component of the quadruple helix, any other parts of the quadruple helix that can join forces around regional innovation ecosystems and can enhance this collaboration, and they may act as facilitators. Next slide, please. So the eligible activities are mainly activities that are absolutely essential in order to bring these technologies, these innovative solutions, or these new altered or improved products, processes, or services to the market. So here we are talking, as we said, about mature joint innovation projects. And by mature, we mean projects of more than TRL 6 in shared smart specialization areas. Therefore, these activities will include financial and advisory support in order to have these joint innovation projects. Therefore, we expect in our I3 projects the companies to demonstrate, to test, to pilot, to go on having a small scale or large scale product validation or market replication in order to bring these products to the market. And these projects can be structured around value chain investment portfolios. And what we mean by that, we mean that we expect to have some sub-projects that can run either sequentially or in parallel in specific smart specialization areas. This can be investment-ready projects, and these can, for instance, demonstrate technologies in different value chains, or can tackle specific challenges, regulatory or other kind of challenges identified by the consortium. Next slide, please. So as I already said, based on the Oslo Manual for Innovation, we have this list of technology readiness level from 0 to 9. Here we are talking about mature projects, post-prototype projects from TRL 6 and on. This means that technology should be demonstrated in relevant or operational environment and can go up to 9. Next slide, please. So the target investments can be either tangible or intangible, which means that also the IPR issues can be considered, the licensing or the know-how. We are talking about advisory support in order to prepare business and investment plans in specific value chains so as to go to the market with these technologies, with these innovative solutions, or a kind of financial support in order to have some arrangements or some designs and some plans to bring these new altered or improved products, processes, or services to the market. As I mentioned before, we expect companies to join forces together with other experts, with other competence centers in order to connect or make complementary use of different facilities of testing, demonstration, piloting, and other kind of facilities necessary for the implementation of the project. Here, you should pay attention because the new prototypes are not eligible. However, adaptation can be eligible of existing prototypes by combining 2 or more key different enabling technology in this existing prototype. Next slide. So we talk about value chains a lot. We are not very sure if everybody is aware what a value chain means. So an example of investments in value chains will be useful here. For example, in the value chains investments, we expect to see different actors joining forces together with companies to form these strategic networking alliances and to implement activities in order to implement different kind of activities from research, design, and product development with the different inputs towards the production and then to reach the end consumers. Here we have the example, for instance, of electric mobility, of autonomous vehicles or automated mobility that actually we can see here the different segments of this value chain. In order to have a vehicle, you need materials, you need battery, you need software, some charging infrastructure or applications. So this should be brought together to give value to the product. And in the frame of the i3 call, maybe some partners may decide in this specific value chain that they would like to improve, for instance, the materials to make them more environmental friendly, biodegradable, bioplastics, etc. So in this case, maybe they would like to join forces to validate these materials, to test these materials, to validate this innovative technology, that they can either decide to focus on this main value chain or to validate these technologies in other sub-value chains or in other completely different value chains, for instance, the sports equipment or the kitchen equipment and so on. Next slide, please. So it's very important here to mention that the project should, the proposal should monitor and should include the key performance indicators mentioned in the call or in the call document. So, for instance, the number of regions that participate is important, where they come from, if they're more developed, less developed, etc. The innovation dimension is important as well. How we progress from TRL of departure, which is 6, towards 9. The gender balance as well, we would like to see also women participating, the intellectual property strategy, the value chain, how many value chains are involved in the proposal, and also the leverage of private funding and also the time to market. Next slide, please. So as mentioned already, we have three topics: the digital transition, green transition, and smart manufacturing. Here, depending on the content of the proposal, we expect applicants to select only one topic to submit their proposal. Of course, the applicants are not restricted to submit only one proposal. They can submit other proposals, different proposals as well, in different topics, but they should ensure that we're talking about different proposals. In case, for example, we see that a proposal is identical or similar and is submitted in in 2 or 3 topics, then during the eligibility criterion, we will make sure that we will only consider the last submitted proposal. Next slide, please. So a few words about each one of the topics. Here we will only speak about objectives. About the themes and the expected outcomes, we would advise you to look further into the call documents because the information is very detailed. So about the objectives, we're talking about of the digital transition. We're talking about interregional investments in order to commercialize and bring to market digital innovative solutions, and therefore to improve the efficiency of services and the accessibility. Here we are focusing on 3 different areas about support to these interregional investments: digital economy of innovation and innovation, digitalization of public administration, and digitalization of healthcare. And in the pandemic, in the current situation that we are facing, we all understand how important it is to support also with innovative projects the healthcare system. Here, and in all the 3 topics, we would like to inform you that at least 70% of the grant must be allocated to investment in companies, as I already mentioned in the beginning. And important element here to consider is that proposals related to digital transition in the manufacturing should not be considered in this topic, but should be submitted under the Smart Manufacturing Topic 3. So whatever relates to manufacturing, we have a separate topic, topic 3, smart manufacturing, and all proposals should be submitted there. Next slide. So for the green transition, we would like to see interregional investments in green technologies for the commercialization and market uptake of technologies for sustainable industry, sustainable transport. And this sustainability is a prerequisite for this topic, and and eligible other objectives for food systems, for agriculture, for energy, for mobility, for any other value chain, in order also to eliminate pollution and climate action. Again, 70% of the grant will go to investment in companies. And as I said before, if proposals are related to green transition in the manufacturing, they should submit it under topic 3. Next slide, please. About smart manufacturing, this is about interregional investments in order to improve the delivery of new or improved products, processes, or services in the manufacturing industry. Here, we expect also proposals to deal with the sustainability and the digitalization, as I said before, in the manufacturing industry, to develop products and improve processes, for instance, in order to lower waste, pollution, energy use, or material consumption, and to uptake new innovative solutions in order to face these challenges, and to contribute towards the digital and the green transition. Next slide, please. So here it's just, we would like to show you an example. We take this business case of 3D printing. Here the challenge is that we would like to reduce the weight in automotive machinery and aerospace applications via using lighter 3D printed hybrid components. So a prerequisite and a specific goal objective, as we said in the beginning, is to combine supply and demand. So to the right, you can see that in terms of demand, there are some companies that have specific innovation needs. They're coming and they're established in a specific regional innovation ecosystem. They're coming from a more developed region, and the coordinator, who needs to be a no-profit organization, can be a chamber of commerce, for example, a business association, a regional development agency, and so on. So this is about the demand. About the supply, to the left, we can, for instance, for the sake of the project, we can have some SMEs that are producing these lighter 3D printed components. They can come from another regional ecosystem, a second regional ecosystem, from a more developed region, for example. And these SMEs may complement the value chain of larger companies that represent the demand. Here, of course, in order to go on with this project and to validate this new technologies, these components, there is a need to have the expertise of competence centers. For instance, they may be experts in product and design specification. And here we can see 3 extra regional ecosystems that are joining forces in order, for instance, regional ecosystem 3 and 4, they may be experts in product specification for tests in fatigue, durability, or to make some crash tests. And then the regional ecosystem 5 may be a cluster that is expert in design specification. A 6th partner can come, can be an end user, can be an EU association, for instance, and they can represent machinery and automotive companies in order, for instance, to contribute in standardization, certification issues or bottlenecks, or they can further disseminate this technology via specific licenses to their members. Next slide, please. So the total budget, so some technical information. Now we finished with the description of the content of the call. Some more technical information from my part. So the budget of the call is in total 76.6 million. It's split into 2 years. Since the indicative range of the grant is expected to be around 4 to 10 million. Then the number of projects expected to be funded, an indicative number here, of course, is 4 to 5 per cutoff per year. So this means that within these 2 years that we are covering, we expect to have in this call 8 to 10 projects funded. And the funding rate is 70%. Next slide, please. So the eligible participants and countries, any independent legal entity, either public or private, established in EU member states, including the overseas countries and territories, is eligible to participate in this call. The third countries can participate, of course, but they will come with their own funds, with their own funding. They're not eligible for funding by the I3 call. The applicants that can participate, this can be components, representing different components of the quadruple helix, representing different regional ecosystems, as I mentioned. So they can be either public authorities, public bodies, universities, research and technological organization, RTOs we mentioned here. They can come from companies, they can be companies, specifically SMEs, or their associations, their clusters, or they can be end users in a general sense, and they can also involve citizens if this is necessary for the project. Next slide, please. So eligible consortia, here we try to, in this schematical presentation, we try to present you the minimum requirements that are necessary for the eligible consortia. So in terms of the geographical composition, each project, the minimum requirements for each project is to have minimum 5 partners from 5 different regions and from 3 different eligible countries. For example, in this scheme, you can see that partner 3, 4, and 5 are coming from the same country, but from 3 different regions, region 3, 4, and 5, and this is the minimum requirement. The coordinator must be a non-profit organization. So here we may have, for instance, public bodies, we may have research organizations, or we may have, for instance, any other non-profit organization, cluster, innovation development agency, and so on. The coordinator must be established in a more developed region. And here we also need to have at least one partner to be established in a less developed region, transition, or outermost region. About the type of partners, the consortium must cover both the demand and the supply. And the consortium should also involve various quadruple helix components. Here, what we mean by various, here maybe a suggestion would be to cover at least 3 components of the quadruple helix. Next slide, please. So many of us many of you that are participating in this info session may not be aware of what we mean with the terminology that we are using: less developed, transition, more developed regions. So to make it clear, this is this terminology, and in order to find the category in which you belong as partner in a possible future project, a Commission implementing decision of the 5th of July 2021 is setting up the specificities and is listing the regions that are eligible for funding from ERDF. Next slide, please. So in order a project to be eligible, it should be submitted electronically via the Funding and Tenders portal, of course, before the call deadline, the 2 cutoff dates that we are having. And they should submit a full set of required documents. In particular, the application should be consisted of different elements. The Part A, administrative, that includes administrative information about the participants and a summarized budget table. Part B, which is the main core of the proposal that describes the technical information of the project. Here, pay attention that we expect to have also Part C. This is not available for the time being in the Funding and Tenders portal, the Part C, due to a technical issue, but we are dealing with it, and this will be available soon. So be careful in order to fill this in, to this Part C, that will comprise of some project data. It will be a very simple form to fill in, presenting the type of innovation, for instance, if it's a process innovation, etc., presenting some basic information about the nuts of the different partners that are participating, and the TRL level, the expected TRL level from the start till the end of the project. Here we expect to have only one Part C submitted, only one submitted per proposal. This can be submitted, for instance, by the coordinator. Also, we expect to have some mandatory annexes, a detailed budget table, CVs of the core project team, and another element you should pay attention is that it's important also to submit a letter of support, a kind of endorsement letter that should be provided by the competent authority in charge of the Smart Specialization strategy. And here we can go to the next slide, please. So here it's a part of this letter, which is a standard form that the competent authority needs to fill in. And here the competent authority needs to confirm that they support this application, which is in line with the Smart Specialization priorities of the region. Here you should also introduce the coordinator's name as the consortium leader. And when it comes to specificities, to the letter of endorsement, we expect to have only one per participating regional ecosystem, which means that we expect to have this letter only from the partners of the consortium, not only from the coordinator. And of course, we expect one covering all partners of the same regional ecosystem. This letter should come at the closest NUTS level, at appropriate NUTS level. Of course, this depends on whether a country has a national or regional smart specialization organization. For instance, instance, in the case of a public body that participates as partner in the consortium, or in case, for instance, of 2 or 3 regions participating in from the same country in one project, then we expect to have only one letter coming from the national level, NATS1 level, for this letter of endorsement. Next slide, please. So very quickly, we have this timeline that shows the different steps, the different times, the different dates that we have set up for the first cutoff. The call opened the 23rd of November, as mentioned also by the previous speakers. Then the first cutoff is the 1st of February. And after of all this sequence of steps, we expect to have the grant to be signed by November 2022 and the project to start as of December 2022, next year. Next slide, please. So the second cutoff that we expect to have the 18th of October, again, after following different steps of evaluation, step 1 and 2, we expect to have the grants signed by July 2023 this time, and we expect the projects to start in 2023 in September. Next slide, please. So here's some links, some very useful information. We would like to advise you to take a good look to all these documents, especially the call document that provides all the information. And here you can also see some emails that you can send any questions that you may have in order to get some answers and some further clarifications. Next slide, please. So 2 slides more and I'm finishing with my presentation. So since many of you may not be quite familiar with the funding and tenders portal, here is some information how to have access to this portal. For instance, you can Google funding portal and you can have immediate access to the funding and tenders portal of the Commission. Then you can type in the search field Innovation Investments Strand 1. And then to the right, the 3 topics will appear, the green, manu, and digit. You can click on the topic of your interest. Next slide, please. And then you can go to topic conditions and documents. And if you scroll down, you can see the call document of Strand 1. I think that this is all from my part. So thank you very much. And we will be available for any questions.
Christina, thank you. Thank you very much. I profit of this transition between Strand 1 and Strand 2A to clarify a terminological issue and to avoid misunderstanding. Strand 1 is not for developed regions. All regions, less developed, transition, more developed, urban regions, rural regions, can and should participate in Strand 1. What we expect, however, is that there are developed partnership, that we have mature interregional investment behind it. And this is important to avoid the impression that we have a call for developed regions and another for less developed regions. In fact, as you have seen in the presentation of Christina, we expect different regions to participate in the partnership. And with this, we move to the second strand, the Strand 2A, and I think we have Michael and Sylvie, correct?
Correct, yes.
There you are. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm Michael Bertz from the EISMEA, and together with my colleague Sylvie, I will go through the scope and objectives regarding Strand 2A. You will recognize a few or some of the coming slides, but don't worry, we will highlight always the specific info important for the specific scope and objectives of Strand 2A. So, as pointed out at the beginning of the day by Nicola, you are well aware that the ERDF aims at strengthening economic and social cohesion in the European Union by correcting imbalances between its regions. For this reason, the Strand 2A of the I3 instrument focuses on the support to less developed regions in the development of value chains. In particular, this strand focuses on increasing the capacity of less developed region innovation ecosystems to participate in global value chains, as well as increasing their capacity to cooperate in partnerships with other regions. So, next slide, please. By helping businesses to work with innovation actors in other regions, the Strand 2A intends to support companies to bring innovative products and services to market and address societal challenges. This implies developing value chains in smart specialization areas and creating bridges with leading regions. I3 encourages the collaboration between businesses, the research environment, and the public sector in order to increase innovation and competitiveness of EU value chains. Targets of this trend are emerging partnerships led by less developed regions. The intention is to help them accelerate market uptake and scale up of innovative solutions in shared smart specialization priority areas, as well as to develop a portfolio of investment projects. Collaboration between less developed regions and led regions is encouraged under this trend. The final beneficiaries of the project must be companies. Regional innovation ecosystems play the role of investment dynamics facilitators. Next slide, please. Again, to point it out very clearly, strong cohesion dimension by creating links between less developed transition or outermost region and more developed ecosystem actors is the core specific objective. Move on, please. Next slide. As you already heard, companies, mainly SMEs, are the main target. The final beneficiaries of the project must be companies. Regional innovation ecosystem play the role of investment dynamics facilitator, as already said. SMEs are the main target. I3 offer SMEs the opportunity to enter into innovative environments where they can get expert support and overcome the difficulties related to validation and testing of new solutions. By collaborating with others in test beds, SMEs can share costs by creating open innovation environments for knowledge transfer and interregional collaboration. So, next slide, please. So let's talk about the specific scope and the eligible activities. 2A provides financial advisory support to companies for the development of value chains in less developed regions. The proposal, they should focus on concrete projects helping companies in less development regions to build experience and demonstration activities in an interregional context. Productive investments in companies located in less development regions, developing value chains and creating the conditions for innovation diffusion in these regions. Building preconditions in less developed regions for successful international or interregional collaboration in view of the participation in global value chains. Integration of local actors, again, in particular SMEs in less developed regions, in the value chains of multinational companies, promoting internationalization and the participation of these less developed regions in global value chains. The eligible activities under I3 Strand 2A might include actions building or strengthening innovation ecosystems, which promotes collaboration inside and outside the region, matching business sector needs with research capacities across borders, and positioning the region in global value chains. This can be achieved via small size interregional projects in S3 thematic areas. The project under this strand will involve quadrihelix partners will strengthen the access to innovation leaders and will facilitate collaborative innovation projects between multinationals and local SMEs. This project must be led by a less developed region and might foresee the collaboration with a more developed region or market leaders in a given value chain. Given the size of the project, the consortium will be limited and will perform simplified demonstrations project inspired by Strand 1. Final beneficiaries must be companies. The final goal of a Strand 2A project is to make the less development region and companies ready for Strand 1 project. Type of the actions. Action consists of activities directly aiming at producing plans, arrangement, or designs for new, altered, or improved product, processes, or services. For this purpose, they may include testing, demonstrating, piloting, large-scale product validation, and market replication. You heard that before, I know. A demonstrator or pilot aims to validate the technical and economic viability of a new or improved technology, product, process, service, or solution in an operational or near to operational environment, involving where appropriate a demonstrator. This includes the validation of technical and economic performance at system level in real life and operating under market conditions. Market replication aims at supporting the first application deployment in the market of an innovation that has already been demonstrated but not yet deployed in the market due to market failures, barriers to uptake. Next slide, please. Given that I3 Strand 2A has a strong cohesion dimension, market replication does not only cover investments new to Europe or new to the application sector. It also covers multiple market applications of an innovation that has already been applied successfully once. This will contribute to innovation diffusion in less developed regions. Outcome of Strand 2A projects are, for example, the development of value chains in less developed regions, new or connected, improved internationalizations of less developed regions, reinforcing their position in global value chains, increased innovation diffusion in less developed regions, improved cooperation between large multinational companies and SMEs, involvement of companies in demonstration activities in an interregional context. Please, next slide. This you heard before. I just like to point out here again, new prototypes. Christina explained very well, not eligible, but adoption of existing prototypes, as you heard before. Please, next slide. Yes, the key performance indicators are identical. The project should describe the progress towards commercialization of the innovative interregional investment. The innovation infrastructures and advisory services provided to companies must be linked to the actual business investments. So when we talk about interregional dimension, talk about geographical coverage of participating regions, the interregional character of the project considered at portfolio level, so companies from different regions participating in the investment portfolio. When we talk about innovation dimension, we talk about the innovativeness of the project, the innovation diffusion, new to market, new to the company, the innovation maturity, the TILs you heard before, we started TIL 6, the impact of innovative solutions brought to the market. When we talk about investment dimension, it's about the evidence to be provided on the basis of a market analysis, time to market, progress from the TIL2 of departure. The private investment leveraged by the project, important point, involvement of impact investors in the consortium, and of course, for example, the portfolio balance across geographical regions more and less developed. The value chain dimension, talk about the number of co-investment projects developed and implemented in the portfolio, the integration of new regions, the integration of new regional actors, the IPR dimension, important. We talk about the business plan, the IP strategy. How is your IP strategy reflected in your business plan? How is the IP protected, etc. Gender dimension, as Christina mentioned, we like to see, or the applicants should outline how gender balance and the participation of women innovators will be promoted. Next slide, please. You saw topics. We have these three main topics: digital transition, green transition, smart manufacturing. This was very clear. Let's go more a little bit in detail. Next slide. Yes, this is about the digital transition. I give you just a few examples regarding the themes and priorities. So the objective here under digital transition, we have digital economy innovation, digitalization of the public administration, digitalization of healthcare. Next slide, please. So you have all this information very detailed in the relevant call documents. But just to give you a clear impression about or around the objectives and themes and priorities. So or let's say it this way, under this is one slide back, please. Let's stay with the digital. Sorry. Yes, we have, as pointed out, economy, public administration, healthcare. So regarding digital economy innovation, examples, themes and priorities are here. The deployment of innovative solutions, the ICT uptake in SMEs, including infrastructure services, demonstration of innovative digital technologies, digital skills are to mention, digital-based open innovation. Under digital transformation of the public administration, we have in mind services for e-government, including the take-up of Europe-wide interoperable services by using digital technologies, including AI or cybersecurity. Investments in innovative solutions helping administrations to make services user-friendly, accessible, and more interoperable. Under healthcare, innovative investments in security of health data, investments for the digitization of healthcare systems in interoperability, investments related to the acquisition of digital skills needed in healthcare. Let's go now, next slide, to the green transition objectives. Yes, as you can see and as you heard, support innovative value chain investments, support to interregional investment in sustainable food systems, sustainable agriculture, clean and efficient energy, sustainable industry, building and renovating, sustainable mobility, eliminating pollution and climate action, to give you a picture. That means when it comes to themes and priorities, we talk about innovative investments in, for example, decarbonization, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, contributing to improve air quality. We talk about smart cities, very relevant, smart, sustainable, efficient transport solutions, and or alternative fuels, climate action, environment, the management of natural resources, business investments related to renewable energy and energy efficiency to make industry more sustainable, energy efficiency in buildings, sustainable blue economy, contributing to the coastal protection, and so on. Bioeconomy, efficient and sustainable agriculture and forestry, innovation in marine, maritime, and inland water, sustainable solutions, just to give you a concrete impression here. Let's go to smart manufacturing. Thank you. Here, we talk about the improvement of the delivery of new improved products, processes or services in the manufacturing industry, development of complex products, the uptake of newer improved manufacturing solutions. What does it mean as far as regards themes priorities? That means includes demonstration process in the sense of helping new products to reach the market faster or having more efficient and sustainable processes adopted by the industry. Connecting or making complementary use of testing and demonstration facilities at interregional level. The implementation of interregional demonstration cases to test and replicate the results. The innovation diffusion and involvement of SMEs and in EU value chains. And with this, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Sylvie, who will take you through the technical part of the Strand 2A. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. Can we please go to the next slide? I will dive you today into the practicalities and into the technical part of Strand 2A, which probably will sound and look very similar to the Strand 1, which Christina, my colleague, already presented. But as Latin say, repetita iuvant, and of course, there are also some specificalities of the Strand 2A, which is different from Strand 1. But let's start with the budget. So Strand 2A call has a total budget of 68.8 million, and it's divided in 36 for the year 21 and in 32.8 million for the year 2022. What is the max grant amount? Here we give an indicative range for this Strand 2A, and we have an indicative range between 2 to 3 million euros for max grant amount. And the number of projects that can be funded, again, we speak about indicative number, we have about 10 to 15 per cut-off. So if we count the two cut-offs, we would expect between roughly 20 or 30 number of projects to be funded. And here again, of course, it's worth it to repeat that funding rate is 70%. Next slide, please. What is the eligibility criteria for the participants and for the countries in this Strand 2A call? Indeed, the legal entities should be public or private. So every legal entity, public or private, is eligible to participate in this call. The entities need to be, must be established in the EU 27 member states, including the overseas countries and territories, the so-called OCTs, and the third countries, as mentioned by Christina, can participate. However, they are not eligible for funding under this call. Particularly the applicants, so the entities, public or private, need to be part of the quadruple helix partnership, part of the regional and the national ecosystem. In particular, we speak here about public authorities, universities, research, technological organizations, industry. Here we mean large companies as well, business, small and medium enterprises, startups, clusters, and as in the other call, citizens and end users. Next slide, please. In particular, let's see the composition of the consortia, so the eligibility of the different partners and the leader of the consortia. The composition should be, we expect to have minimum 3 partners in this call, and they should come from 3 different regions stemming from 2 different eligible countries. What are the type of partners that compose the consortium? The consortium must be covering demand and the supply side, and it should involve various quadruple helix components. In particular, we suggest minimum of the 4 of them. The coordinator, the specificity of this call is that the coordinator must be established in a less developed transition or outmost EU region or countries. And as in the previous call, it must be a non-profit organization. So this is the requirement for the leader of the consortium. coming back to the partners, at least one partner must be established in a more developed region country. Here we give you also a schema of the minimum requirements for an eligible consortium. As you can see, you have the coordinator coming from the less developed region, the partner 2 coming from a more developed region, and the partner 3. This is, of course, up to you to decide from which type of country or region can participate. Next slide, please. Here to explain again the eligible countries, and not to be mixed here with other third countries. We're speaking only about the EU 27 and less developed region. Here we make reference to the common provision regulation, which divides the EU region into less and more developed according to their GDP. So if there are less than 75%, they are called less developed, and it's more, then it's the more developed regions. And here you can see, of course, all the different categories and links to the different type of regions and countries, according to this common provision regulation of the Cohesion Fund, of course. Next slide, please. Going into the admissibility and in the required documents for the Strand 2A, we have the application, it's the part A, which needs to be directly filled online in the EU tender and grant portal. It's an administrative information about the participants and, of course, the summarized budget of the proposal. Instead, the part B, so the part B of the application, also needs to be downloaded from the EU and tender portal, and it has to be completed, and then it needs to be re-uploaded into the EU and tenders portal. It gives the technical description of your project. Indeed, the part C, as Christina mentioned, it's to be filled again online, but for the moment is not available, but will be, the issue will be solved soon. And so the part C will be available and, of course, needs to be filled by the applicants. The mandatory annexes and supporting documents, the detailed budget table of your project, the template is available, the CVs of the core project team, and the letter of support that is coming from the authorities in charge of smart specialization strategies. And the proposal, of course, must be submitted online, as I said, in the tenders portal, and it needs to be inserted in the tenders portal before the 2 deadlines of the 2 cut-off dates. Next slide, please. Here we come again to the letter of support, which is part of the admissibility requirements. So it's a required document that needs to be filled in from the coordinator. And we expect to receive a letter of endorsement, 1 per participating regional ecosystem. So the region or the national authority that is authorized for the smart specialization strategy needs to sign this letter for the whole ecosystem. So if we have different ecosystems, we need to have different letters. But of course, 1 letter per ecosystem is enough. So it has to cover all the partners of the same region. And we expect that per the NUTS level appropriate, which can be national NUTS 1 or national or regional NUTS 2. Depending, of course, on the organization of each country, because we have different countries with different dimensions, and each of them have a different type of organization. Next slide, please. I will go quickly to the timeline of the Strand 2A of the first cutoff for the 2022, which is very similar to the previous call. However, because indeed the deadline for submitting the first cutoff is the 1st of February, 5 o'clock Brussels time. And if you are awarded, you will get to know the information in June 2022 of next year. And you are expected to sign the grant agreement, so the contract, November next year, and to start the project implementation between November and December next year. Next slide, please. Here, quickly, I go through the timeline of the second cutoff, which the deadline is on the 18th of October next year. If you are again awarded by the project, you will get to know the information in March 2023. You're expected to sign the grant agreement, the contract, between June, July 2023, and that the starting of the project should be starting in August, September 2023. Next slide, please. Some useful links and some useful information, which we absolutely invite you to read carefully. The call documentation, the I3 reference documents, so the background of those two calls, the model grant agreement, the annotated grant agreement, which will give you more information on how to fill in the contract, and of course the manual on how to submit the proposal in the EU funding and tenders portal. Here I would like to highlight the two differences between IT help desk. If you have any question because you are unable to submit, so you have any technicality while submitting your proposal, or if you have content questions, you need to submit them to the functional mailbox that you see in the end of my slide, EISMEA I3 instrument, just to give the difference between the two information points. Next slide, please. Strand 2A, again, how to find the information on the call and topics. It's easily found in Google. You can Google the three different strands, sorry, green, manufacture, and digit, or you can find them easily also if you go directly to the E1 portal grant, where you can find all this information about the two strands, Strand 1 and Strand 2A in particular, and you can click on the different topics to get information, particularly on the topics. Next slide, please. Strand 2A, how to find information on the call and topics 2. Here you need to click on all the documents that are found under the Strand 2A call documents, and you will find all the information related to the Strand 2A. This was my last slide. Thank you for the attention, and I get back.
Michael, Sylvie, thank you very much. A lot to digest. Stay with us. Don't abandon. Now we zoom in on the construction of the budget tables, which is often a part that is complicated, and this is why we thought useful to look into it. And I'll give the floor to Simona and Alessandra. Are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
There you are. The floor is yours.
Problems with the microphone. Good morning, everybody. I will tell you today how to fill in the budget table. Next slide, please. The detailed budget table, as said by previous colleagues, is a mandatory annex of the proposal that you will submit. It's an Excel sheet, and I will show you how it looks like. You have as a general recommendation to be consistent, because as said before, you will find a summarized budget table also in part A, in the technical part of the proposal. So you will copy manually the data that you encode in this Excel sheet that I will show to you in the summarized budget table, which is in Word in the technical part. So please be consistent, and please remember that the summarized budget table in part A prevails as budget table on the Excel version. As a general recommendation, we say that you have to provide estimations on the costs that you have to fill in the budget table. And these estimations have to be reasonable, accurate, and detailed. We can go ahead. The first tab on this instruction is related to the technicalities, so on how to add columns and rows and work packages. So we can go ahead, please, to the next slide. The second tab of the detailed budget table contains some general data that you will fill in, and they will be copied manually to the following tabs. You will encode once for all the project number, the acronym of the partner, and your identificative code. I underline the fact that the detailed budget table has to be filled in by each partner. And so this data will be copied automatically for each partner. At the bottom of this part, you see that you have to start numbering the work packages, which are the actions of the project, the actions that you will implement, a generic name for each work package, a short description, and you start planning the number of travels that you foresee for each work package. We can go to the next slide, please. This is the detailed budget table that I will show to you directly, but I wanted to show you now that it is the third tab in this Excel sheet that is made up of 5 Excel sheets. Then we can go quickly to the fourth and the fifth, and then we can come back to the third. Next slide, please. The consolidated table per participant will be automatically created once each participant has encoded the costs and all the information required in the detailed budget table, so in the third tab. We can go to the next slide. To the fifth tab, the consolidated table per project. This is up to the coordinator. It's the responsibility of the coordinator of the consortium to manually encode all the data, the budget, the costs that have been detailed by each participant in this table. So it's an accurate work that the coordinator has to do. We then can go ahead to our main slide. So the detailed budget table, I repeat, that has to be filled in by each participant. You can see on the upper left that the project number, the project acronym will be automatically copied once you have already inserted this data on the second tab. Then you can start seeing that the detailed budget table is broken down not only by participant but also by cost categories, and I will explain you some of the meanings of the cost categories, and by work packages. As said, the work packages are the actions, so you have to detail the cost for by category, and by work package. We can go ahead, please, and to the next slide. Yes. You will see clearly that the detailed budget table is made up of 2 main parts. And visually, you will see that one is in blue and one at the end is in green. The main difference is that the part in blue is related to the costs of your project. You will have to estimate the costs, while the part in green will contain the data on the income of the project. And we will see what this all means. We can go ahead to the next slide, please. We will dig into the subject. We have a first print screen of the Excel sheet of the detailed budget table as it will appear to you. The first cost category is related to the personnel. You have already here, as an example, 2 work packages, and you have to insert, in this case, the data related to the personnel. For this cost category, you will see that you will have a drop-down menu. So you will choose the type of personnel that you plan to employ in your project. The type of rate is a monthly rate. You will provide an estimation of the monthly rate. Then you will provide the costs automatically and the time that this resource will be employed on the project. The multiplication will be automatic. It's important in the other column. It's important that you fill in the last two columns. You will have to say whether this resource will be used also in other work packages. And you will shortly describe the role and the tasks of this type of personnel. We can go ahead to the next slide, please. And then here we see what the personal cost categories are. First of all, you can employ the employees, your usual employees, our natural persons with another type of contract, a direct contract, also secondary staff, and other costs that you can budget for personnel are the costs for SME owners and beneficiaries that are natural persons without salary. We can go ahead to the next slide and see what they are. Employees are simple staff that work for the beneficiary, so for the company, for you, under an employment contract or another appointing act. The costs of this personnel are eligible, of course, if they are assigned clearly to the action, if they will work on the implementation of the action of your project. The costs that we recognize are limited to the so-called statutory costs, meaning the salaries, the social security contributions, the taxes, and all the costs that derive from the labor contract and the national labor law. You have to provide, as said, an estimation of the monthly rate, but try to be as accurate as possible and possibly use the rate that you can retrieve from the documents that you have already, since these documents can be asked to you during the evaluation stage or at later stages if your project is awarded and you will receive the EU grant. We can go to the next slide, please. Other stuff that you can involve, whose costs will be recognized, natural and seconded person. Natural persons are staff working with another type of contract, which is a direct contract, but not an employment contract. Usually an example for natural person are the in-house consultants. Seconded staff is temporary transferred staff personnel from a third party, so from a party which is not your partner in the project against a payment. The costs for this type of personnel are eligible if this personnel works in the same condition as the employees in terms of premises, on how the work is organized, and of course they will work under the direct supervision of the beneficiary. We can go ahead to the next slide, please. SME owners and natural persons beneficiaries. Their costs are eligible as well. The SME owners are the owners of partners that are SMEs, and they do not receive a salary. The natural persons beneficiaries are the beneficiaries of the project, of the EU grants, so the participants in the project that are natural persons, like a classical example is the sole trader. So persons who are whose legal personality is not separate from the one of the company they run. In the previous case, we have asked for monthly rate and estimation. In this case, you will have simply to encode the unit cost that is set in the annex that you will find among the annexes of this call, the model grant agreement. The annex 2A of the model grant agreement sets already the unit cost, the daily rate that you will have to encode. We can go ahead to the next slide, please. We go to another cost category, the subcontracting. You see that the layout of the Excel is the same in blue. Again, you are requested to encode a cost that is an estimation, and you will have to shortly describe what it is. You will see that also in part A, in the technical part, you will be requested to encode the subcontracting costs. I recommend you to keep an eye and be as consistent as possible, and do not, the tables related to subcontracting have to be the same, with the same costs and the same headings. Let's go ahead. Please, thank you. What are subcontracting costs? They are related to the purchase of goods, works, and services that are needed for the implementation of the action, so are necessary for the implementation of your project. And as said, you have to mention them also in the technical part. Please bear in mind that you cannot subcontract core tasks of the action, meaning, for instance, the project management. You cannot subcontract the management of the project that you are running. And subcontractors are different from, for instance, in-house consultant, from the fact that they do not work with the direct supervision of the beneficiary. But please remember that you are responsible towards the European Union for the works done by subcontractors. We can go ahead to the next slide, please. And you have to remember, when you choose your subcontractors, that you have to ensure the best value for money principle, or you have to operate a choice on the basis of the lowest price. And you have always to avoid any conflict of interest with the subcontractors. We can go to the next slide, to the next cost category, the purchase costs. These are costs for, yes, thank you. In the previous slide, we saw the layout of the Excel sheet. What are the purchase costs? They are costs that you incur for ordinary contracts, for goods, services, and works that are necessary to carry out the action, but they are not necessary to implement the action. There is this important difference. For the implementation of the action, you will use subcontracting. For other types of services, works, and goods that are important, but they are not part of the action, you will have to budget purchase costs. We can go to the next slide where we have some example. Yes, thank you. Travel costs, equipment, and other goods and services. We can go to the next slide, please. Travel, accommodations, and some system costs are eligible, and they have to be budgeted, of course, only for the personnel who work on the action. They have to be justified, only the cost for the journeys that will be planned for the participation in meetings foreseen in the project will be eligible, of course. For the estimations, you can use or actual costs, meaning costs that you will incur and you can estimate because they are based on the policy of your company on travels, or you can use also unit costs that are set in a commission decision. Here you find the heading. You can click on it, so you will see that the unit costs are predefined and they are based on the country where the journey takes place and the distance. We can go to the next slide, please. Equipment. As regards the pieces of equipment, can be hardware, software, furniture, please remember that not the full cost is eligible, but only the portion of the costs that correspond to the duration of the action and to the rate of use of this piece of equipment. We can go please to the next slide. Yes, you can buy new equipment or you can buy second-hand equipment. You can also rent it or make a contract of leasing. you have to record these pieces of equipment in your register of assets and follow the international accounting system for the registration and for sure your usual practice. As regards this rule that you cannot, you will not be entitled to the reimbursement of the full cost, please remember that, as said, only we will take into consideration the duration of the action and the rate of use. So again, please be consistent. If a laptop is used by a member of the staff who will work only on 10% on this project, the rate of use of the laptop will be the 10%. We can go ahead, please, to the next slide. Then final purchase costs related to other goods, works, and services. Here, as said, we have ordinary contracts to carry out the action. So the costs that you will foresee for training, for the organization of trainings, for consumables, for publications, for translations. Here, if you can see, there is under 3, the audit fees. So the certificate for financial statement that you will need to submit, since the EU contribution will be higher than 325,000 euros. So you can already budget this cost for this document, for this certificate that you need under other goods, works, and services. We can go ahead to the next slide. Again, you have always to ensure the principle of the best value for money or the lowest price when you make your choice. And you will calculate these costs on the basis of actual costs, so actually incur the costs. You can go ahead. The other cost categories under this call is represented by the financial support to third parties, and my colleague will explain to you in the following intervention. We can go ahead, please. Next slide. Under the cost, we have nearly finished. The last category is represented by the indirect costs. These are the running costs of your organization. For instance, the rent and the utilities. So they are called indirect because they are not directly linked to the project. A flat rate of 7% is automatically applied to the sum of the cost categories that we have seen so far. We can go ahead and then have a look at the, please next slide. We will have a look at the final part of the detailed budget table. So the part in green, the income of the project. Here you see the symbol of equal because the two parts have to be in balance. The income has to cover the costs of the project. We can see that the categories of the sources of the income are the EU contribution, the revenues and by third party, the revenues and other contribution by the third parties, and the contributions of the beneficiaries. We can go ahead to the next slide. So you see it's green. This is the most important part because here you see that this funding rate of the 70% is applied to the total cost in the first row. So here you the maximum EU contribution, the grant, will be automatically calculated. We can go ahead. Final part of the detailed budget table. I will start from the bottom. You can see the heading related to the own resources. So the resources that each participant will use to cover totally the rest of the income, or sorry, to the rest of the costs apart from the EU contribution, or partially, because you can also cover the costs with the revenues that are the income generated by the action. For instance, if you ask for the payment of fees when you organize an event, or contributions by third parties that can be financial, but also in kind, meaning non-monetary contribution by third parties, so parties that are not the beneficiaries of the EU grant. I've finalized my presentation. I thank you for the attention. I stay available at the end for further explanations, and I wish you all good luck with the submission of your projects.
Alessandra, thank you very much. I understand that you covered the entirety of this section on the budget table, and very dense, very important. We can now move then to the question of how to organize financial support to third-party scheme, and I understand it is Milena that he will taking care of it. Milena?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here today to share some information about the financial support to third parties in the I3 calls and your future applications. Next slide, please. Well, let's start first by clarifying what is the financial support to third parties. The financial support to third parties is a funding that is given by one of the direct grant beneficiaries of the consortium partners to recipients that are not party to the grant agreement. This is a mechanism to distribute public funding in an efficient way. Why efficient? Because if we compare the cost for financial support to third parties to the cost, to the EU cost, for instance, we see that the time to grant is much faster, that the administrative procedures are much more SMEs friendly, and there is less competition than for direct EU funding. Also, I want to clarify that the actions may involve financial support to third parties only where this is explicitly allowed in the work program or in a co. Next slide, please. Here we can see that the financial regulation introduces the notion and main conditions for applying financial support to third parties. This is Article 204 of the financial regulation that is applicable to the EU institutions and other EU bodies. That comes again to repeat that financial support to third parties can be used only if a work program or a co foresees to be used. And it also gives the first and very basic set of conditions for using it. Next slide, please. And here comes the good news that the I3 calls, both strands and all topics of both strands, they give the possibility to use the financial support to third parties. If you go through the code text, you will see some of the paragraphs that refer to this possibility to use the financial support to third parties as a tool to reach your objectives. Here I put some, I will not read all my slides, I put some of the paragraphs of the code text that refer to this possibility. So what is important here to keep in mind that for the I3 calls, the financial support to third parties is not compulsory. You can decide to apply it or not to apply it in your future project, and you can propose it or not propose it in your applications. But it could be a tool to achieve indeed your objectives. Can I have the next slide, please? Financial support to third parties is allowed in all topics, as we said, but there are certain conditions. These conditions are set up in section 6 eligibility, and in particular in category eligible activities. Let's go through these conditions to see a bit more what has to be done and what are the rules for introducing the financial support to third parties. First of all, the financial support to third parties in the I3 projects cannot exceed 30% of the total grant amount. You can't request a grant for 6 million euros and foresee to distribute 3 million euros as financial support to third parties. You really have to pay attention to this. Otherwise, the costs might not be eligible. The maximum grant amount for financial support to third parties per party, meaning per SME here, may not exceed 60,000 euros unless a higher amount is required because the objectives of the action could otherwise not be possible to be achieved. So if you want to propose to give more than 60,000 euros per SME, you have to justify in your proposal why you want to give more than 60K. The cost for providing financial support to third parties will be reimbursed at 100% with the limit of the overall co-funding rate fixed in the grant agreement. Here, please pay attention to the fact that the funding rate for direct I3 beneficiaries, as my financial colleagues just said, remains 70% for the cost category financial support to third parties as well. This means that if you give 60,000 euros to one SME as a financial support to third parties, you will get reimbursed for up to 42,000 euros by the contracting authority. The other 30%, they can come from other type of income. The recipients of the financial support to third parties must be SMEs, and here I wish to pay particular attention to the definition of the SMEs that is available in the EU recommendation from 2003. I put a link in my slides. You will find it later on our website. So the recipients must be SMEs that are established in the S3 participating regions covered by the consortium. Next slide, please. The calls for financial support to third parties must be open, but they must be published widely and to conform with the EU standards concerning transparency, equal treatment, conflict of interest, and confidentiality. The calls for financial support to third parties must remain open for at least 2 months, and the outcome of the calls has to be published on the participants' website. The calls, they have to have a clear European dimension. And last but not least, the applications must, in addition to all these conditions that we have just listed, clearly specify why financial support to third parties is needed, how it will be managed, and to provide a list of the different types of activities for which a third party may receive financial support. Your proposals must also clarify what are the expected results from this financial support to third parties. Next slide, please. There is another article that is another part of the code text actually that is quite important, and this is a paragraph in section 10 stating that the costs for financial support to third parties are allowed for grants. Here, please pay attention then that the code does not foresee distribution of financial support to third parties in form of prizes. Next slide, please. I think it's important also to have a quick look to the general model grant agreement. There are 2 important articles that you have to pay attention to even now when preparing your proposals. The first one is Article 6, eligible and ineligible costs, and here we have to go to point DD1, financial support to third parties. This article actually states the set of elements that have to be present in the grant agreements of those projects that will be awarded. So there are some elements that must be there and must be already present in Annex 1 to the grant agreement. But what is Annex 1 to the grant agreement? What could be Annex 1 in the future if you get awarded? Annex 1 is your proposal that is copy-pasted, and very small adjustments could be done during the grant agreement preparation. But we expect that your proposals are mature enough, so they already have to address these, let's say, elements that will later on be part of your grant agreement if your project gets awarded. The first, I wish to go very quickly through them. The first one is the fact that the maximum amount of the financial support to each third party has to be set up. we just said that it's usually 60K, or it could be more if it's well justified. The criteria for calculating the exact amount of the financial support to third parties. Here you have to decide if you will go for lump sums or you will distribute the financial support to third parties based on actual costs. The different types of activities that qualify for financial support to third parties. I think that here it's easy because the context already mentions the activities that could be eligible for financial support to third parties, and those are testing and piloting activities by companies, large-scale product validation, market replication, etc. Of course, in your proposal, you could be more explicit and you could further develop this list of activities. The persons or categories of persons that will be supported. Okay, here again, it's quite easy because the code text already limits the possibility only to SMEs that are established in the regions of the consortium partners. And last but not least, the criteria and procedures for giving financial support to third parties. How are you going to distribute it? What are you going to take into account? Are you going to set a list of like 2-3 criteria, for instance, impact, quality and implementation of the action, excellence? Do you want to weight some of these criteria, etc.? You have to decide that, and it's really it would be very appropriate if you already mentioned this in your proposals. Can I have next slide, please? And the second article that is very important for the financial support to third parties from the model grant agreement, it's Article 9.4, and this one comes to explain that if your projects are awarded and if you decide to go for financial support to third parties, you will have to extend some of your contractual obligations to your third parties. I think this article is quite clear, so you can go and consult it later on. Can I have next slide, please? And here I come to propose some expiring examples, and those are examples from INUSUP H2020 INUSUP 1 projects. Those are cluster facilitated projects for new industrial value chains. They have almost all of them used the financial support to third parties to provide innovation support to the SMEs. You can have a look at the website that is on the page that is available on the funding and tenders portal. Here I put the link, and also I put a small print screen to show you how it looks like. There the announcements actually of all individual calls for financial support to third parties, not only for INUSUP 1 projects, of course, but for many other projects that are implemented under Horizon 2020. And if you click on each individual announcement, you will be guided how to reach the code text, so you can have a look and maybe get inspiration for your own proposals. Can I have next slide, please? Here you will see some of the INUSUP 1 projects that I've just mentioned, and you will see also links to their websites, where you can also go and get some inspiration for designing your own proposals if you decide to include financial support to third parties. Next slide, please. And here I put some tips and lessons learned from the H2020 INUSUP 1 projects. Of course, there are a lot because we had a lot of projects, a lot of successful projects, and every project had its own particularity, but there are very often some topics coming up, and that's why I prepared this short list. When drafting the proposals, please be extremely clear with the mandatory elements that we just went through in the previous slides. Another big question that usually comes to our beneficiaries is, do they go for lump sums or for reimbursement of actual costs when they want to provide financial support to third parties? There is no magic recipe, as I put here, but lump sums prove to be easier to be managed. Open calls are very time demanding to manage. This is also something that you have to keep in mind when you prepare your proposal. It's impossible that you design, you write a call, and you call for financial support to third parties and you publish it within 1 week. You have to foresee more time. It's the same for the evaluation of the proposals that you will receive from the SMEs. Please simplify the administrative procedures as much as you can in order to optimize the time for contracting the SMEs. Next slide, please. We advise our beneficiaries to involve their legal and financial departments when drafting calls for financial support to third parties, but also we can already involve them at the moment of preparing your proposals. Please also keep in mind that there are already platforms for management of financial support to third parties, because you need a tool, an IT tool, to get the applications from the SMEs, to reply to them, to say the acknowledgement of receipts, to help the whole evaluation process, then to award the SMEs, maybe smart contracting online, etc. So there are already platforms, there are already solutions that are here. You don't have to start from scratch to invent a new platform, but you just have to look for the appropriate partners within your consortium who could maybe already propose a ready solution. Prioritize the quality of the project over the quantity. This was also one of our advices when implementing INUSUP 1 projects, and partners of the consortium. It's also important to mention that for INUSUP, the partners of the consortium could not be beneficiaries of the grant. If you give financial support to third party, you have to give it really to a third party, but not to someone who is already partner in the consortium. Next slide, please. And this will be my last slide with the main message. When preparing your proposals, please try to have a common understanding about the financial support to third parties already when you prepare the proposal. Don't wait that you start the project and then you start to decide who will do what. I think that the proposal should really already summarize the repartition of tasks if there is financial support to third parties. Pay attention to the data protection and IPR issue, and keep good communication with the awarded SMEs, who are already keys of the successful implementation of the financial support to third parties in the INUSUP 1 projects. That's all from me. As I said, we will publish this presentation on our website, so you have more time to go through the tips and the lessons learned and to ask questions, if any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Milena. And now the cherry on top of the cake. Eric has the daunting task of bringing everything together and providing you with tips and tricks to ensure that you submit a good proposal. So Eric, the floor is yours. If you're there. Eric?
Yeah, now
Okay.
I'm here. Thanks. I was a bit frightened now, but thanks for these nice words. So I have justified with the cherry here on the cake. So I'm happy to do that. First of all, good morning or good afternoon if you are based in Greece or Finland or similar countries. Now, as Nicola said, now that you have heard so much about the nitty-gritty details, I want you to go a bit a step back and think about the basic elements of your proposal. Thanks for the next slide. So first of all, The first question you have to ask yourself is if the organization is eligible, obviously. I mean, we heard many times that the question of the number of type of entities, the number of countries plays a role. Also in regards to the different strands, then don't forget that the affiliated entities do not count towards the number of entities minimum. There's also a question of the statute of the coordinator, obviously, and there has to be no profit. I have to put my camera on, indeed. Then there is a question of, if you submit one topic twice, then we will only take the one that was submitted, last, if it's the same topic, the same project. The question of the existing smart specialization strategy is important. Other elements, including whether the project is not environmentally harmful, the TRL level, the question of the double funding, obviously, that we will not accept. And then I put a big etc. because I want you to have a look at the nitty-gritty details of the topic, conditions, and documents. The main question you have to ask yourself is, obviously, if you have a realistic chance of being on the main or reserve list. If not, please get trained and come back later. There will be many more cutoff dates to take your chance. Be aware of the deadlines, obviously, and then don't forget that once you submit your proposal, you can modify it until the deadline. So that's a very important to know. Next slide, please. Yes, so that's a bit detailed. I mean, many things have already been talked about the part A, which is the wizard that will guide you through the system, where you have to insert admin data, the budget as well. The part B, which is the offline part that you will upload later, including, for example, the CVs or the main description of the action, obviously. And then there are the different steps that the wizard will guide you through from the creation of the user account and the creation of the personal identification code to the submission of the proposal. I will not go through this in detail now because you have heard it already partly, and the wizard will guide you anyway. I also say you that the part C is mentioned here in addition, because this is a particular element of this call. And as my previous speakers and colleagues have told you, this will be added later to the submission tool, and you will be able to provide the data. Next slide, please. Then, of course, there's the question of that you should read and really reread the call text and the call page in detail. I mean, it's not by coincidence that we talk about one of the first criteria will be to assess you will be the relevance for your project to in comparison to the I3 work program. And it does not, it's not enough to repeat the work program and the call text. We want to hear from you your specific contribution to it, taking into account also the different strands with different approaches. And then for the concerning the topic description and the topic conditions, yeah, don't forget that we have the 3 different topics covered. So choose the right topic and think about the activity scopes and expected impacts. What is important, although it might be a bit detailed, but you should have a look at the annotated model grant agreement, because it gives a lot of explanations about certain articles that you will have to comply with. Then for the preparation of your proposal, there are 2 important documents that I really advise you to have a look at, because they give you a bit of a red thread while writing your text. First of all, there's the proposal template. This is clear because you will see some extra explanations what we want from you in the different criteria and sub-criteria. And then have a look also in the call at the award criteria. This is very important because you will see in more detail that, for example, for the relevance and quality criteria, there are different elements that we will check. I'll come back to that later. And we will check different elements at the two different steps of the evaluation procedure. Then very important to understand, this is not a two-stage, but a two-step procedure. So the nuance here is that there will be only one submission from you, and we will then do the evaluation in two steps, meaning that when you write your proposal, please do as if this is your final shot. Actually, it is your final shot, because there will not be a second chance. I mean, the second chance might be in the next cutoff, but for this call, for 2021, 2022, you have only this one chance. So write your proposal as if you want to go and get the funding. So this is very important to understand. Then, as a general background, very important to understand where we come from. We have heard some slides on that already, on the smart specialization, on the European Regional Development Funding context. Please have a look at the policy and regulatory background. Next slide, please. Be prepared, indeed, and this means that not only that you just do the minimum just to get over the line, because the funding threshold will be very high, you can imagine, because EU calls are usually very competitive. So there are the minimum thresholds, obviously, but which are there. But in addition, please try to strive for perfectionism, try to be the best, and to go for the maximum point. You should also take into account that indeed there are different weightings for the four criteria. And indeed, if you are better in the criteria that weigh more, then it's good for you. But if you prepare your proposal, don't try to technically to spend more, and more time on one criterion than on the other. All needs to be really good and excellent to have a chance to get the funding. There is the advice from me that there are existing, similar calls, although I3, the program, is a brand new program, but still there are elements that might be useful for your proposal. If you talk to experienced other applicants from former H2020 or COSME call for proposals. Then the question of the consortium is obviously the key question. We want here cross-regional cooperation, so the right mix is the crux, basically, of your proposal. There we have on the portal we have a search database where you can look for interested partners. But in addition, we've also the Enterprise Europe Network, the largest SME support network in Europe. Then a small detail, but very important, please only add partners if they agree. And you will see in the wizard that it is possible actually to add partners even if they haven't agreed. So they will see, once you submit your proposal, they will see that they have been added. So you should make them aware before you do that, please. Then the questions we would like to get from you, that's always also good for us, because we can fine-tune, we can improve ourselves. So this is very welcome. When you do so, and later you will see the links to the how you can do that. Please do that a maximum 3 days before the call, because we cannot assure if you send your question 3 hours before the deadline that something will be published. It will not be 3 hours before the deadline, you can imagine. So 3 days is the deadline which we would set here. And then what we usually do, or but better, what we never do is we never actually reply in detail bilaterally to one person or to one applicant due to competition reasons. Though we strive to publish the answers to the FAQ section on the portal. Then you have the right to submit the proposal in any official, I should have put EU language, not any official language, any official EU language, but we would prefer English because it makes it easier for translation issues and to avoid misunderstandings. Next slide, please. Now, here, the question of I would like to raise here is that you think about when you write your proposal of how the evaluators, the external evaluators, and we as EU staff will have a look at your proposals. Put yourself into our shoes and be to the point. I mean, that's a lesson you learn also from life, that longer is not necessarily better. But we really insist on the formal aspects of your proposal, also for fairness reasons. There are the maximum number, maximum margins I've put here. If you go beyond them, we will, or the evaluators will, disregard the text that goes beyond the limits. That's why we also don't want you to delete any templates that with instructions, because that would advantage you obviously towards others compared with other applicants. So don't do that, because otherwise we have to take measures as I write here. For the question of reader friendliness is important. Obviously, make it nice for the readers. Be complete also in the documents you upload. You will see that some of the documents will not block you in the system. Others might block you. So, but if they are missed out, then there will be, obviously, this will be counted in the evaluation. There's a question of the budget tables. There they have to match, and we have the particularity here that we have the budget table in part A and part B. So pay attention to that. And then please, yes to images and graphs, but only not for the sake of it, but if it makes sense. Next slide, please. Coming now to the evaluation and work procedure. On this slide, I will go quickly because it will explain it in more detail in the next step. I mean, here it is, as I explained, we have these two steps. You submit once, and when we have a look in 2 steps, first we filter out the best projects in terms of relevance or the overall objectives and the quality of the project team. And then afterwards, we have the second step, later on. I'll come back to that in the next slide, please. And here we have the first relevance, and that's why I've put here steps 1 and 2, because indeed this relevance is checked twice, in the evaluation procedure. We'll have a look whether there's a match between your proposal and the work program topics. Whether your needs analysis makes sense, whether you adhere to the SMART objectives: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And then also in terms of synergies at European level with other projects, that is very important for us. Next slide, please. For the quality steps, we have a look at what is your specific value added to, and what makes you better than the others in the standard. What's your role outline? We will have a look at the resources, obviously, not only for the staff and other direct costs, but also for the subcontractors. There's also the possibility of in-kind contributors that were not mentioned yet, I guess, but because they cannot be budgeted, but they can be explained in the text parts 1 to 5. Each beneficiary's contribution plays a role. It's really a cooperation project, and that's why we want a lot of detail from you, from the organizations, from the staff, from the overall consortium management, and obviously very important for the project management and the risk management and mitigation. Next slide, yes. On the cost effectiveness here, there's a question of what are the measures you have put in place to be financially efficient. We want details in the budget table, obviously in terms of numbers. You will not be asked, for each work package to explain in detail why you spend so much, on that work package. But we would like to hear from you overall why you think that the budget table, as it is, foreseen by you, is effective. Because badly balanced and excessive cost estimates will be downgraded in the evaluation. This budget planning is very important. You will see it also, it will take time. You have seen it in the presentation by my financial colleagues. So have a look at the guidance that we have on staff costs, especially the link here derived from Horizon Europe. And then also from the consortium agreement, this is also something that's highly recommended by us because it makes clear how the procedures and rules are managed within your consortium. Next slide. 2 slides then, and I'm done. Then in terms of impact, this is clearly one of the key factors here. We want obviously that you have the impacts that you have promised through your KPIs, that you have the desired effects, and that you target the right groups and how those will benefit. We want to know what exactly is the innovation here you are tackling, what are the innovations, and also in terms of communication during the project, but then later what happens after the project, how will you disseminate the results. So the sustainability of the project is very important. That's why we focus so much also on the term business plan. You will hear a lot because we want really to commercialize innovations and to bring them one step forward. Final slide, please, the next one. And these are the final tips for me, where I would like to remind you that we will check your proposal as it is. I mean, we will not, and you should not expect from us to improve your proposal during the grant agreement preparation. So, although some adaptations are possible, please submit it as if you thought this is the final product you would like to propose to the EU. That means don't overshoot, be ambitious but realistic. Coming back to the smart, the smart methodology, and then to finish off here, some links again that I think have been shown by the colleagues before. From the call page, the online manual. Then, if it's not about IT, you can use these functional email address and send an email to us. As I said, responses will be given through the FAQ section, and no detailed answers will be given directly via email, but you can send them to this box anyway. And then you have the very important overall websites that put everything into context. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Eric. Now I have to leave you, and so I'll pass the floor to Monica, who will not only moderate the question and answer session, but also bring you till the end of this meeting and to its conclusion. So thank you very much, and see you around. Monica, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nicola. So we still have time, luckily, for the question and answers. Just very quickly, we have chosen the questions which have not been addressed by the presentations before, and those that were more frequently asked. For your information, all the questions and answers will be published on EISMEA's website, also with a link from REGIO. So we will try to answer a major number now within the remaining 25 minutes. So let me right away start with the first question that we see. So we do have a question on cluster organizations, whether those can be project partners of the I3 in Strand 1. Can I give that question quickly to Christina?
Yes, thank you, Monica. I think that in my example, the example that I gave during my presentation also include a cluster. So, of course, clusters are also an important component of the quadruple helix. And we said that we would like to include at least, let's say it's suggested by us to include at least 3 components of the quadruple helix. So the answer is yes, they absolutely can participate. And on top of that, they can also be coordinators in case they're non-profit and in case they're established in a more developed region.
Thank you, Christina. The next question is more financial in nature. So whether the 70% of the grant allocated to investments in companies can be provided in the form of services. And actually, we also have another question with regards to the 70% of grant that must be allocated to investments in companies. For the first question, Alessandra or Simona, could you please take that one?
Yes, no, here concerning if we refer to the 70% of co-funding, the 70% is applicable to all the eligible cost, so to any category of cost. And I think that we had also the question if there were some categories with a higher or with a lower co-funding rate. The reply is no. So the 70% is a single funding rate applicable to all the costs that are incurred for this action, including the financial support to third parties.
Thank you very much, Simona. So the next question is whether the sub-projects have to have a cross-border dimension or whether they need to only demonstrate their value added. If you don't mind, I will take that question. The instrument is called Interregional Innovation Investments instrument. One of the eligibility criteria and the main objective is to foster cross-border interregional cooperation. So it is necessary that consortium partners come from different regions and from different countries, and that those conditions are different for Strand 1 and 2A. So I think with that, that question hopefully is answered. When it comes to the participation of large companies, I may take that question as well. There are specific cases where large companies could also be eligible. The focus and the main target group of the I3 is SMEs. However, following the ERDF regulation, and here I would refer to the Article 5.2, there are certain conditions when productive investments in enterprises other than SMEs may be supported. Mainly, these have to be justified when SME investments are concerned and they are connected to value chains in larger companies. I would please just go to the article, so 5.2 in the ERDF to have more specific answer on that question. So let me see, can an institution participate in several proposals or just one? Can I give that question to Christina?
Yes, thank you, Monica. The answer is yes. There is no restriction in the call document on the number of proposals that an entity may participate, as long as, however, they participate in completely different proposals in terms of scope, in terms of content, in terms of everything should be completely new. So we don't expect to submit, as I said, similar proposals because this will be ineligible and we will only accept the last submitted one.
Thank you. And before you go, I think you could also probably take the question about cluster organizations and whether they could be a part of a consortium in order to support their regional SMEs via cascade funding.
I think that I replied that clusters can be partners of a consortium. Therefore, they can, and within the project, they can make arrangements in order to have financial support to third parties.
Okay, thank you. So let's see the next question, a bit on topic. So does green also include sustainable blue economy, for example, innovative aquaculture? Michael, can I give the question to you?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. So as presented an hour ago, and as you can see in call document Strand 2A, for example, page 13, we given non-exclusive lists of teams' priorities. And here we clearly mention, for example, business investments related to a sustainable blue economy contributing to the coastal protection. or we mentioned as well investments in bioeconomy, efficient and sustainable agriculture, forestry, innovation in marine, maritime, and inland water sustainable solutions. I think the answer so is clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Next question. So will the three priorities that we have currently, so green, digital, and smart manufacturing, and the topics be the same also in the second call, or will there be topics such as biosensor applications? So first of all, we do have one call throughout the 2 years. So in case the question relates to the second cutoff date, so for October 2022, the topics will remain the same. When it comes to calls that will be launched in 2023-24, for the moment the topics are open. We will see what the experience is from the first 2 years, whether we need to add other topics, whether we need to narrow those down, or whether the topics that are available now cover or do provide the right approach. So this is just to be seen. Next question. So which regions fall under the outermost region category? I think that was addressed in one of the presentations. Sylvie, you may want to.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Monica. Indeed, it was presented by me. The outermost regions are the ones that have a less gross domestic product than 75% of all the EU 27 regions, countries, pardon. Sorry.
All right, thank you very much. And then we also have the EEA listed countries. There were questions about general eligibility of the countries. Could you also take that, Sylvie, including the EEA countries?
Yes, absolutely. Indeed, for Strand 1 and for Strand 2A, all the countries that are outside the EU 27 are not eligible for funding, but they can participate in the projects, but with their own funding. So Norway as well is eligible to participate, but not for funding, only with its own funding.
Thank you very much, Sylvie. And just to add a bit, in the presentation of the work program at the beginning of the event today, we have also said that we are in discussions with those countries to see whether their involvement, closer involvement in the program may actually change, and then they could be eligible later on. So would we have any more questions? Okay, let me see. So, so if we don't pass on the first cutoff date, is there a possibility to pass on the second cutoff date with the same proposal? Who would like to take that question? I think it is relevant for both strands.
I can take it, Monica. Thank you.
Yes, please.
So in fact, you have two cuts of date. If you are not able to present your project in the first cut of date, of course, you can present it in the second one.
Okay, very good. Next question. So that's also a bit topical. So does the establishment of new material use, setting up new material value chains to produce circular ingredients for food sector under the topic of smart manufacturing or green transition? Michael, could you take that question, please?
Yes, thank you very much. Again, I try. So here I can give the following details. Materials, when you talk about materials, they have to be considered more as a component of the value chain of a certain production sector. And said that, our interest is to see more than material innovation. We want to see also investments in circular food production. And then, now if we refer directly to the call text, we clearly say, when your proposal is related to the topic of green transition in a kind of smart manufacturing sector, then you should submit the proposal under smart manufacturing. But I also invite you here then to check our more detailed answers than in the FAQ when they are published. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Well, back to the list of eligible countries. Sylvie, just quickly.
Yes, yes.
I think that's a new
Indeed,
question.
Ireland is part of the EU 27, therefore it's eligible for the 2 calls.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any more questions? Let's see the other categories that we may have. Okay, now let's get into the financial and more general type of questions. Okay, so we have the third-party financing, which can represent maximum 30% of the grant amount, but at least 70% of the EU grant should support SMEs. So how should the remaining 40% be provided? Can I ask Simona or Alessandra to take that question?
Yes. So the 30% of financial support has to be intended as pure financial support. So the cascading grant that is addressed to the third parties, to the SMEs via grants. Then we have the rest of the grant that is dedicated to all the other eligible costs that could of course include also some other kind of support to SMEs, but that is not financial support to third parties. Out of the total eligible cost, as previously said, we will reimburse 70%, while the other resources should come from other income or other own resources from the beneficiaries.
Thank you, Simona, and please don't go away, because what I see, the next question is about the EU co-financing that is 70% and whether it is possible to cover the rest from national public funds.
Yes, it is possible. This can be part of the co-financing of the beneficiary.
Okay, thank you. And again, still just stay with us, please. There is also a question on about in-kind contributions, whether those cannot be declared as costs, meaning that co-funding by partners via staff time is not eligible. So own co-funding must be cash contribution. Now, that is the question. Could you please?
Yes, here when we talk about in-kind contribution, we refer to non-financial resources that are brought by third parties, so not by the beneficiary themselves. And in this case, these non-financial resources, non-financial in-kind contribution that are brought by third parties are not eligible. You can have a look at the Article 9.2 of the grant agreement. Besides, concerning the resources of the beneficiaries themselves, the beneficiary must declare all the costs that they have incurred. And then, of course, they will receive a 70% as a reimbursement, but all the cost of the staff, of the subcontracting, and all other costs must be declared in the financial statement.
Thank you, Simona. There is a more general question about the 70% funding rate. It is a global, so how could you explain whether is it possible to have that certain activities are funded at higher rates and some others at a lower rate, provided that the average is 70% after all?
No, the 70% co-funding rate is a single funding rate. In practice, what we will do is that we will assess the cost that the beneficiary has incurred to implement the action, and we will reimburse the 70% on all the cost categories. So despite the fact that the category is personal, subcontracting, financial support, if it is actual cost or unit cost, it will be always reimbursed at 70%. So no categories with a higher or with a lower reimbursement rate.
Thank you, Simona. The next question is about whether applicants can participate within the same cutoff date under both strands. Christina, could you please answer that question?
Yes, thank you, Monica. Of course, applicants are able to participate in proposals under both strands for the same cutoff date, as long as we are talking about completely different proposals.
Thank you. Next question is about the regions. So whether the calls are based on NUTS 2 or NUTS 3 definition of the region. Sylvie, can you take that question?
Yes, thank you, Monica. In fact, here we make reference to the Eurostat division of regions and countries in the EU, so to the NUTS, which is nomenclature of territorial units. And when we speak about NUTS 1, we speak about nations, and we speak about NUTS 2, we have in mind regions. So here it's eligible only NUTS 1 and NUTS 2, so not NUTS 3. I hope it's clear. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, there is a question about macro-regional approach to the calls, whether that will be considered across the strands, meaning 3 or more regions from a macro region. Let me take that question. So what we said is that we are looking at interregional cooperation. So we do want to see regions from different countries. Macro region can be one approach. It doesn't change the eligibility conditions of how many countries need to be involved. It can be mentioned in the application form in any case if some of the applications are coming from a macro region. The next question is, what is the percentage of aid for investments and expenses? Can I give that question back again to Simona?
Here I ask the support of the operational unit responsible. Can you please go back to the question that I cannot see it anymore? Here, what is the percentage of aid? Yeah, this is for not strictly related to the budget. So maybe we can, if we don't have the reply, we can reply later in writing.
Okay. And about the co-funding by ERDF, whether the remaining 30% can potentially come from ERDF?
The remaining 30%, here maybe the question should be fine-tuned a little bit better, but the remaining 30% can come from national funds or from other financial resources by third parties or from own resources. So if the person can specify better in writing the question, we can be more precise then.
Thank you, Simona. Can you better explain, so what do we mean by portfolio of projects? Christina or Sylvie?
Yes, Monica. Well, as I explained, maybe I was not clear enough. Here we are trying to establish projects that will consist of different value chain investment portfolios. And by portfolio, we mean that we expect to have sub-projects, actually. And this, of course, depends on the nature and the objectives of its proposal. But here we expect to see, for instance, sub-projects that may tackle different challenges, that may tackle different bottlenecks identified by the consortium, or to run in parallel different demonstration of specific innovative solutions in different value chains. And these are just examples.
Thank you, Christina. Let's see. So the next question in the list. Is it necessary that there was previous collaboration among the partners of a consortia? And is there a place where to find potential partners? I could take that question. There is no necessity to have previous collaboration, but when you submit your application, the consortium and the project and the proposal needs to be give the reassurance that that is something that will work in the future. And when it comes to looking for potential partners, there are the smart specialization platforms, thematic smart specialization platforms. That is one way where you can find partners for you. There are currently 3 thematic smart specialization platforms, one on energy, one on agro-food, and you'll have to and on industrial transition. So there you would already find several topics and partnerships who are active, and that's a great place to or great space to find further partnerships or further collaborating partners in case you would like to apply for I3 or collaborate together on certain topics. A question again on cascade funding. So is just the funding rate of 70%, and who is covering the 30% of the consortium partners or the cascade funding SME? Can I give that question to Milena, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yes, as I said in my slide, the 30% of the financial support to third parties has to be covered by the consortium own funds. When I say own funds, as my colleague said, these funds can be coming from different sources. It's not just from another. Maybe you can marry two EU projects in order to proceed, etc. But what you will get if you give, again, I give this example, if you give 60K to one SME, we reimburse you 42K for this financial support to third parties.
Thank you, Milena. And for the moment, so the last question, so will all the strands be relaunched in all biannual work programs? Let me take that one. So as I explained in the presentation on the work program, so strands 1 and 2A are launched already in the current work program, as well as 2B will be launched towards the end of the year. And in the next biannual work program, these strands will definitely be launched. We will see the need and the possibility to also launch then the remaining strand 3 in the next biannual work program. So hope that with this we have answered most of the more frequent questions that you have. If you haven't seen your question or you don't have your question answered now, I will repeat. So there will be a Q&A published on EISMEA's website, and there you will be able to then have more specific answers to those questions. That Q&A will be open for further questions as we go along. So as you are preparing your proposals, more new questions will arise. Feel free to send them to the EISMEA's functional mailbox.
Monica?
Yes,
it's Eric. There's another one on strand 1, if you may.
Okay, very good. So we still have a question then. Is it mandatory to apply for the program with a consortium, or is independent participation possible? Christina, could you please answer that one?
Yes, well, normally we are expecting specific consortia because we have this eligibility criteria that we have, for instance, we need partners representing different components of the quadruple helix, the demand and the supply, and we have this minimum numbers of participants in the consortia. So indeed, you need to participate as an applicant via consortium.
Thank you very much. So unless there are more questions, okay, assuming that there are no more questions that we could share today during the event, then I would really give the thanks to both those who have submitted questions and also the team that has taken up the questions and answered them. And I would like to now give the floor to Luisa Prista, who will provide a concluding remarks and provide some conclusions to the info day. Luisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Monica, and good morning or good afternoon. We are already good afternoon, but the session went really very well. I'm very honored, of course, of closing this session. I'm the head of department, Innovation Ecosystem, Single Market Program, Entrepreneurship and Consumers at EISMEA. And EISMEA, as you know, and this department is directly in charge in implementing this call. Indeed, we are arriving to the end of this Info Day, and it's time to draw some conclusions. Globally, I would say that the event was dense, of course, but very informative, also very fruitful and result-oriented. I feel that from what I was listening now, your reactions and the questions, the Info Day gave full and interesting information, and I'm sure that you find all the valuable information that you need in the future to prepare your application. In terms of participants, I think also that we reach a very important audience. We reach 800 participants, which is impressive. And it's also very encouraging because like this, we can measure the interest of the call that this call is creating now. We covered, I think that we covered all the practical aspects, and I hope that the event will help you in clarifying all the operational and financial practicalities on preparing your proposals. It's now important, as my colleagues mentioned, in particular Eric presented a lot of documentation and guiding principles that you have to check, and also Sylvie gave you the links. So please follow this. And also don't forget that you should learn about the policy side of this call as well. Because that was presented by our colleagues from DG REGIO, and that explains very well the objectives and the scope of the call. In terms of the questions and answers, I think that they were all replied. As Monica explained, you will have all the written, you will have all the answers. And please, if you still have questions, which is going to happen during the applications that you are going to do, refer to the frequent last questions. And don't forget that we are here, we'll stay here, and we are at your services. Now, I would like to give you some points on what I retain or what I highlight as main messages. Starting by the policy message, and I think that they are very important, and Nicola really made a point on this aspect. You have to take into account this is a new instrument, and this is a new instrument, a new cohesion instrument, financing innovation in the member states through the European Regional and Development Fund. Up to now, you are using to look at Horizon Europe, Horizon 2020, the Single Market Program, and so on, but this is a new cohesion instrument. This is new, and this is the first time that you are launching such a cause here in EISMEA. Another important aspect is that it is focused on smart specialization and brings together local and regional actors. The other aspect is that it's connecting developed regions and less developed regions, and aims also to strengthen their value chain. So those words like value chain, connecting developed and less developed regions, smart specialization and cohesion should now be back in your minds. In terms of operation message, you got a lot of message, a lot of information, but I think it's very important to highlight that the main beneficiaries of the calls are the SMEs, and the SMEs that are established in the smart specialization regions. It's also important to notice that we are talking about the TRLs that start at 6. I also understood, and you made a lot of questions on the thematic areas. This is also important to see, and we have now for this call, the call that is open now and will be closed at the end of next year. We have 3 thematic areas, and thematic areas are new improved manufacturing, digital, and green transition. And you have this all explained in the commentations, because sometimes it's not straightforward to understand if a project would fit better one domain than the other. Don't forget that we have 2 cutoff dates for next year, so 22. The first is 1st of February and the second is 18th of October. And also another element that was highlighted by Nicola, that we have to take into consideration the Strand 1 and 2A, and take into consideration the difference between developed and less developed regions. So the Strand 1 covers all the regions, but what is different is the partnerships, if the partnerships are mature or less mature. So there is a big difference of concept in regions and partnerships. So before closing, and since I'm the head of department at EISMEA that is dealing with 3 different programs and also 3 different funding sources for innovation, and I would like to mention the Horizon Europe, the Single Market Program, and the European Regional Development Fund that is really financing this I3 investment, this I3 initiative. I would like to suggest to look at different synergies between the 3 programs, as Monica already mentioned in her presentation. Some initiatives, and I'm telling this because some initiatives may help you to develop your projects. Already we notice the support given by Horizon 2020, because this is the on live, the last program, and the Horizon Europe. Milena mentioned, for instance, directly, she mentioned the InnoSubs project. And all those projects, they create synergies because all together they represent the actors of the European innovation ecosystem. So now I would like to concentrate just on the single market program. And in the single market program, for instance, there is an initiative that you should take into account. And in fact, it came in the questions that you put just now, is the cluster initiative, in particular, the newborn initiative Euroclusters. Those are financed by the Single Market Program. You know that clusters are a target group that is completely transversal to all the programs, and they play a very important role in the European economy and innovation. We all know that clusters really matter, that they have a huge impact in the productivity and growth, and not only for individual industries, but also value chains and regions. And here is a hook for you, because most of the times clusters have been drivers of successful partnerships. And our colleagues were mentioned this, and a lot of questions were related to this. So yes, indeed, clusters are to be looked at. Another relevant instrument is the Enterprise Europe Network. I know that one of our colleagues even mentioned the link. And in fact, you should know that the Enterprise Europe Network now is spread over 41 countries and supports SMEs to innovate and grow internationally. Their members are very important part of the quadruple helix with innovation agencies, chambers of commerce, regional public bodies, and so on. And they have a new mandate. Their mandate will start, is enlarged, is reinforced, is focused on greening digital and resilient Europe, and will start on January 22. So it's also an initiative and a group of consortiums not to forget. The end partners, as you know, they were already involved in the phase of definition of national, regional smart specialization strategies via the so-called entrepreneurial discovery process, and they are partners and members of the Smart Specialization Partnership. So take this into account. So in conclusion, I think that you should look to all the all the programs, the Horizon Europe, in particular also the part on European ecosystems. You have to look at the EAN Consortium and European clusters that will play a role in connecting all these regional ecosystems. And Monica really emphasized now cross-border interactions, and this is what we have to do. So I3 is really a new program. It is the first time we are going to do this. We have to learn together how to apply. And I would absolutely encourage you again to seize this opportunity because for the moment is unique. And with this, I will wish you a successful end of the year, the best wishes for 22, and we are looking all forward to receive your proposals, and we are here to support you when you need. Thank you. Monica? So yes, I think that we can close.
Yeah, and I think with these very nice words, we then close the info day, and very many thanks for your participation, and good luck indeed with your proposals. Thank you on behalf of all the team that has been preparing this info day for you. Goodbye.
Goodbye, thank you.